As the final days of 2022 come to an end, we want to take a look at the women who broke barriers, stood up to injustice, and trailblazed a path for others. Despite immense challenges this year, women at home and abroad have fought to save democracy and their own fundamental freedoms, from the ballot box to the streets of Iran to the battlefields in Ukraine. Make no mistake, women were at the front lines of it all. Joining us now for our year in review is CEO of All In Together, Law and Leader, MSNBC host Yasmin Vossoughian joins us. Also with us, Aaron Haynes, editor-at-large for The 19th, the nonprofit newsroom focused on gender, policy, and politics. What a great panel. Thank you all for being with me. Lauren, why don't you start us off and talk about the midterms and how women really showed their power, especially with abortion turning out to be one of the prevailing issues that drove voters.
Well, I think the lesson of the 2022 midterms is don't underestimate the motivating power of women's anger. And all through the summer, lots of pundits were saying that other issues were going to be more important than abortion, but women were saying that this mattered. And it was part of what motivated them to register to vote, especially younger women who came out in newly record numbers. And then for women overall across the spectrum, the loss of Dobbs was galvanizing and drove them to the polls and delivered election results to the Democrats that really very few people, except maybe the women who are paying attention, expected.
Yeah, and Aaron Haynes, if you look at some of these winners from Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, reelected, Hochul elected, the Kansas governor, Pennsylvania Democratic Attorney General Josh Shapiro won the governor. All of these people, and there are many more, campaigned and won on the abortion rights platform.
Yeah, Mika, that's exactly right. And to Lauren's point, I mean, if you were paying attention, you knew that this was going to be an issue because, you know, at the 19th, we long said abortion was on the ballot. You also had candidates that were leaning into abortion, leaning into their lived experience, discussing bodily autonomy. You mentioned Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who certainly told her story on the campaign trail, and that was something that resonated with voters. You had even male candidates in Pennsylvania. Abortion was on the ballot in the governor's race and the Senate race. Fetterman and Shapiro running and saying that they were going to protect, you know, reproductive rights as an issue. And so that was something that I think, you know, for people who were predicting a red wave, they were not predicting that abortion was going to remain front and center.
It's so weird, Yasmin, because a lot of the polls were not showing abortion as a top-tier issue. And so we were sort of watching this play out in real time where people literally told us with their votes what mattered. And 12 women now will serve as governors, up from 9 in 2004. So women's issues were the top of the ballot, and a lot of women ran for office.
I'll tell you, Mika, I think, you know, we all talked about this on air about 2 weeks out from the midterm elections. I remember President Joe Biden was talking about abortion rights being, you know, one of the integral issues going into the midterms. And there was a lot of criticism, especially on air, as to why isn't the president addressing the economy? Because it seems like the economy was the #1 issue for many voters. You know, it was gas prices, it was inflation, and so on and so forth. But abortion proved to be the #1 issue. I was there in front of the Supreme Court when Roe was in fact overturned. I spoke to not only lawmakers there in front of the Supreme Court, but protesters as well, talking about how are you going to maintain this momentum all the way to the midterms. And I thought, considering the way history plays out, that it was going to be pretty impossible, but there seemed to be a lot of optimism they were going to be able to do that. And in fact, they did. And Kansas really was kind of the first indication that was going to be able to happen. I went to Pennsylvania a couple of weeks out, talked to a lot of women voters on the ground in Pennsylvania, talked to them about abortion rights as well.
Yasmin's making a really good point. And another thing that I saw on the campaign trail is that for a lot of women, for a lot of voters, these issues were linked. Abortion is also an economic issue, right? I mean, we know,
sure it is.
You know, people who need access to abortion care are mothers.
I want to end by pulling back and look at the globe. And Yasmin, maybe we can start with you here, just really quickly on the women of Iran and their fight for their rights, and the women in Ukraine who are fighting in a very different way, on a very different battlefield. But wow, are women ever stepping up for themselves and their countries?
I mean, those two stories are absolutely connected, right? I mean, this is, as I've been told by the Iranian diaspora here in the United States, this is the first, think about this, guys, the first female-led revolution ever. They're calling it a revolution that's happening in Iran. These are millions of women every single day, months in now, right, putting their lives on the line because they recognize it is time to have equal rights, right? They recognize a change needs to happen in the country of Iran. They are leading this fight more so than anybody else. And people wonder and they ask, well, what is next, right? What can really happen? Can this really kind of topple the government of Iran? Whatever the ultimate end goal is, right? That country is never going back to what it was even just 3 months ago. I mean, these are women that are going out into the streets, spilling out into the streets with jeans and T-shirts on and no headscarf. It is astounding to think about that reality. Also for myself as an Iranian American woman, someone who has also covered stories on the ground in Iran and knows how that government operates, right, and how brutal they are. But these women, as they tell me, and the diaspora as well here in the United States and across the world, really, they're helping push exactly what these protesters want on the ground there, supporting them, keeping their voices alive as they are continuing to put their lives on the line every single day in Iran. And a woman-led revolution, something that we have never seen in this world.
Democracy relies on women, and that is what we're seeing around the world. I mean, it's so extraordinary in Ukraine as well, and we talked about it all year, Mika. Just the way in which women hold the keys to democracy for everyone in their societies. And that's why this women life freedom is so powerful, why men have galvanized as well, because they know that without women's rights, none of our rights are safe.
Erin Haynes, Yasmin Vasugian, Lauren Leader, thank you all very much. And before we wrap things up, a look ahead to big news in 2023. Know Your Value and Forbes are hosting the second annual 3050 International Women's Day Summit in Abu Dhabi from March 7th to 10th. It's a global event bringing together generations of women from both the 30 under 30 and 50 over 50 lists from around the world. We've already got a great lineup. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Gloria Steinem, Malala. To learn more about the 3050 Summit in Abu Dhabi and how you can attend, go to knowyourvalue.com.